No one in the crowd spoke a word or moved a muscle. Even Chad stood frozen, unable to dial 911. Chase flew into a rage. He picked up Celia's body and carried her gently but quickly to the road. A taxi passed by, stopping at the sight of them. To the hospital. Take us to the hospital now. Several minutes later, the taxi pulled up to the emergency entrance of the Lauderdale Hospital. Chase rushed out and carried Celia into the ER's waiting room. He was screaming, "Help! Someone! Save my wife! You must save my wife!" This night had turned into a nightmare. 30 minutes later, Chase was still standing guard outside the emergency room. Unaware that he was doing so, he chewed down his fingernail until it bled. Suddenly, Jean and Patricia came racing through the hospital corridor and up to him. Their eyes were bloodshot. Patricia saw the words "surgery in progress" written on the whiteboard outside the room and collapsed onto her husband. "Tell us what happened," she pleaded. Chase lowered his head and did not say a word. "My wife just asked you a question. Can't you hear us?" screamed Jean. The situation was dire and everyone was on edge. Only then did Chase reply, his head hanging low. "I got cornered in a parking lot by a motorcycle gang. They took out a knife and Celia blocked the blow. She saved my life." Without thinking, Patricia slapped his face and began to wail. "Ever since Celia married you, nothing has gone right for her. She has no money, and now she may die. If anything happens to her, I will make sure you will pay with your life." He didn't say anything. It was hard for him not to disagree with Patricia. It had been his fault what had happened to Celia. His heart was racked with guilt. He turned to Patricia, hoping to lend her words of comfort. "Don't say such things. She'll be fine. I promise." "Don't make any promises that you're not prepared to keep," she screamed. There was no one in the world she wanted to hear from less than that moment than Chase. "You are not God." She paused for a moment and then said, "If Celia makes it through this, I will see to it that she divorces you." Jean echoed his wife's sentiments. He pointed his finger in Chase's face. "I'll tell you something, Chase. If anything happens to Celia, I will kill you myself." Chase gritted his teeth. Normally, if someone dared to threaten him like this, he would be the first to object. However, this situation was extraordinary and he did not want to argue. Instead, he said, "Please, don't worry. Everything will turn out okay." Jean dismissed his son-in-law's sentiments, saying, "Take responsibility, Chase. Can you even afford to pay for the medical bills? Leave. Now. We don't want you here." Patricia added, "Why is it that my daughter is married to such a scumbag like you? I never want to see you again." Chase was still worried about Celia, and he refused to leave. The three of them stood there in angry silence for what felt like an eternity. In reality, about 30 minutes later, the ER doctor opened the door and walked out to greet them. "Who is the patient's family member?" The three of them all scrambled to get the doctor's attention. Jean's voice rang out the loudest. "Doctor, how is my daughter? Is she all right?" The doctor took off his mask and said, "The patient's life is no longer in danger. Fortunately, she was brought to us just in time. She may need to be hospitalized for a few days." Patricia nodded and thanked the doctor. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. She handed her credit card to Jean and said, "Go and pay, please. I don't want to get a bill later." Turning his head to look at Chase, Jean's eyes filled with even more disgust. "Why are you still standing here? Was hurting Celia not enough for you? Get lost." Chase didn't know what to say that wouldn't add to their problems. As Chase walked out of the hospital, he encountered an ominous, overcast sky. He heard thunder rumble and saw a flash of lightning pierce through the clouds, illuminating 5 identical cars parked head to toe in the hospital's entryway. Anyone looking at the scene would have known that the cars belonged to Tim Sanders, the wealthiest man in Laudervale. At the current moment, Tim, like everyone else, had his eyes fixed on Chase. "Sir," he said, walking up to meet him under the awning. Chase looked back at Tim with darkness in his eyes, each one piercing like a point of the knife. There was a vengeful aura around him more threatening than the rumbling sky above them. Tim looked at him in both terror and awe. The old Chase was back. Back to who he was pre-Celia. Back to who he was when he was wealthy. He gestured Chase to follow him into the first car. Expressionless, Chase did as he was instructed. Once inside, his eyes fell out of focus. "Where is he?" he said to Tim. "At Kearney Plaza," Tim responded. "Take me there," was all he said. In moments, Tim gave instructions to the drivers, and the fleet of identical black cars drove off in the direction of Kearney Plaza. As nearly the only cars brave enough to face the storm, they made for quite a sight on the road. 5 cars black as night with only their headlights piercing through the downpour. Onlookers declared them as a bad omen. Unbeknownst to them, the motorcade drove past Cicely and Quentin, who were on their way to the hospital after receiving the news of Celia's accident. Through the heavy rain, Cicely could faintly make out the figure sitting in the back seat of the motorcade's front car. "It can't be," she thought to herself. "Is that Chase?" She tugged on Quentin's sleeve and pointed to the motorcade as it drove away. "Did you see that? I swear I just saw Chase in the front car." Quentin glanced back over his shoulder at the motorcade. He laughed. "Babe, those are Porsches. No way Chase is inside. You must have imagined it, or you're seeing things," he joked. "Maybe we should get your eyes checked." Cicely gave him a playful whack. He did have a point. Chase could barely afford to take care of his family's basic living expenses. How could he possibly catch a ride in such a luxurious car? Maybe she was hallucinating. It was true she hadn't slept well. She shook her head as if trying to rid herself of any thoughts concerning Chase. Quentin pulled up to the hospital's entrance. "20 minutes later, the motorcade pulled up to the east side of Kearney Plaza's central courtyard. Kearney Plaza was the city's premier housing complex built in the 2000s by famed architect Robert Kearney. Today, the property was worth close to $5 billion. Most people thought the property belonged to Tim, while really the deed was held by the Rothman family. As Chase and Tim looked out into the courtyard, they saw 10 large, tattooed men sitting on the central benches. They appeared to be waiting for something. Or someone.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.